Hello and welcome to my channel Happy Hours. In the last class, we have discussed about the parliamentary system. Today, we are going to proceed and going to discuss about the presidential system. First of all, we should know what is a presidential system. A presidential system is a system where the head of the state and the head of the government is the same. There are two pointers in this. First is the separation of powers between the three organs of the government. It is viewed in the presidential system. And the second point is a member of executive, that is a minister, cannot be a member of legislature. This is the feature of a presidential system. Now we should know what is the separation of power. The concept of separation of powers was propounded by the French philosopher Montesquieu. He was of the view that if the three functions of the state, that is lawmaking, law implementation and law adjudication, are vested in the single person or a single institution, it may lead to dictatorship. In democracy, these three functions have to be exercised by the three different organs. Like in India, as we are having the parliamentary system, the strict separation of powers may not be feasible between the legislature and the executives, but Article 50 provides for the separation of judiciary from the executive. But we can view the strict following of the separation of power in the presidential system such as US. For that, we should know the concept of doctrine of checks and balance. So whenever there is a doctrine of separation of powers, this should be accompanied with the doctrine of checks and balance, where one organ puts a check on the other organ and balances its power. The best example is the US case, where let us discuss the US case. First, legislative check on the executive and the judiciary. The very first pointer is that all the appointments is done by the US president, but that are to be ratified by the Senate. Secondly, all the international treaty or agreements are going to be signed by the US president or on his behalf, but that is also going to be ratified by the Senate. And the third point is the US President and the judges of the US Supreme Court can be impeached by the Congress. So whenever there is the overpower of the President, they can be impeached, or they are not following the Constitution, then also they can be impeached. So we can note another concept here, the senatorial courtesy. Now, what is the senatorial courtesy? The US President, while doing an appointment in a state, consults the senator of his political party from the state, and the approval of the senator is considered as the approval of the Senate. So, whenever there is a appointment, there is a approval by the Senate. Now, we can have the third check, that is executive check on the legislature. After a bill is passed by the US Congress, means the both houses, it is presented to the president for his assent. Now he can give his assent, or he may return it back with the remark to the House where the bill was introduced within 10 working days, if the session of the Congress is to continue beyond 10 days. So if he can sign it or he can return it, and that is also known as the veto power of the US President. The very last check is the judicial check on the executive and the legislature. The judiciary has the power to review a decision of the executive or a law made by the legislature and to declare it as null and void if it is not in accordance with the Constitution or a law. So whenever there is a law is made, it is going to be reviewed by the judiciary, and this is known as judiciary review. Now we are coming to a new concept which is known as quasi-presidential system. So we have learned till now about the presidential or a parliament. The parliamentary system is followed in our own country, and presidential system is followed in the US. Now there is a third term which is known as quasi-presidential system. Now we should know what is a quasi-presidential system. The quasi-presidential system is followed in the countries like France, Russia, and the Sri Lanka, where there is a sum of both parliamentary and the presidential system. It is a blend of combination of presidential and the parliamentary system, but as it is more closer to the presidential system, so it is known as quasi-presidential system, not as the quasi-parliamentary system. So the best example for this is the France, where the French president is directly elected by the citizens of the France, and the French president is going to appoint a person of his own choice as the prime minister. These two are from the presidential system. There are some more points also, as the PM of the ministers and the ministers must not be the members of the legislatures, as we have already seen in the US case. Now there are some points in the parliamentary system also which is followed in this country, like the president can appoint the other minister in consultation with the PM, and though the PM and the ministers are not the member of the legislature, they can take part in the proceedings of the National Assembly. National Assembly is the lower house, and the Council of Ministers is responsible to his lower house. It is also part of the parliamentary system, as in India. Now we come to a new concept which is known as cohabitation. What is a cohabitation? Cohabitation means where the president and the prime minister are of different political party. It can happen in these quasi-presidential system countries. Now, since we were undergoing the salient feature of the constitution, there is one question which is always coming to our point about the bag of borrowings of our constitution. Many people used to say that our constitution is the bag of borrowings. We have borrowed the many things from the other countries. This is not our own. But is it true? Now there is a question, it may be in this form, like how far it is justified to term the Indian constitution as a bag of borrowings. Like Ambedkar said, nothing can be original, and at this point of time. Now with in the direct words or in the answer we can write it: no constitution in the world can claim originality. The ideas must be taken from the political philosophers and the political scientists. Our constitution makers went through the various constitutions, and they took various provisions from them and turn into the Indian colors, and to provision according to the needs of the people and the circumstances prevailing in the country. Like the idea of the federalism, it was taken from the Government of India Act 1935, keeping in view the diversity of India. Our country is full of diversity, so the federation term is taken from the Government of India Act. The idea of federation having a strong center was taken from the Canadian Constitution. And the third point, like amicable solution of the dispute that may arise between the center and the state, or between the states themselves. The idea of cooperative federalism from Australian Constitution. So we can say we have taken the federation concept in three different types. Like the first type is the federation itself from the Government of India Act, a strong center federation with a strong center was taken from Canadian Constitution, and the cooperative federalism from the Australian Constitution. Now, there are some provisions in the constitution which have been taken from the other constitution and have been incorporated in the constitution without any change. So there are some provisions which are just taken from the other constitutions and written in the same way, like the article number 301, freedom of interstate trade, commerce and intercourse has been taken from the Australian constitution. Now, there are some provisions which are our own. That is, it has not been taken from any other country. For example, abolition of untouchability, panchayat, and secularism with our own concept. Now, based on all these analysis, we can conclude that the Indian Constitution may be termed as bag of borrowings to some extent, but it is not fully a bag of borrowings. Now, there is a good saying by the Professor Chetkar Jha that the Indian Constitution is a patchwork, but it is a very beautiful patchwork. So, thank you. I'm going to conclude my session by this. Bye.